Hey, welcome everybody. It's time for some real assurance, some real support, some real advice, and some real conversations about the real insurance needs to protect your business today with the man who seems to really know here, Eddy Canavan. Hey, Eddy.
Thanks, Paul. Hi, everybody. This is Eddy Canavan with Alta Claims and Insurance Services. And, I do this show because I really feel like there's an underserved portion of the market out there, and that is small to medium-sized businesses. Insurance is for the what ifs, and it seems like the what ifs are getting more and more frequent. And, when we watch the news, we see large corporations that have certain things happen to them. And we think maybe if we're a small business or a medium-sized business that we're not vulnerable to those types of issues. And that cannot be further from the truth. So today, I want to talk about cyber vulnerabilities, cyber risk, and cyber insurance, keeping it real for you, for our listeners, keeping the issues real, things that you are going to have to deal with. So today I asked John E. Young, aka Johnny Upgrade, to join me today. Johnny, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Oh, hey Eddie, thanks for the invite. And I really appreciate coming on here because everyone could use this information. I love sharing it. I was in corporate cybersecurity 35 years and retired from IBM's cloud division to pursue my own cybersecurity business. And my company that I founded is CyberDef, short for Cybersecurity Defense. And basically, I'd written a book called Don't Hack, How to Kick Hackers to the Curb. You can find it on Amazon. And in it, anyone that's interested can find everything from personal cybersecurity safety, which is right in the front, and it gets deeper and deeper into corporate cybersecurity as it goes on. Now, the great thing, Eddie, is that everybody needs cybersecurity insurance. The problem is there's been a huge increase in hacking in the last few years that have forced cybersecurity insurance providers to raise their rates and make it more difficult to get it. And also there's situations where the payouts are less than people think they would be.
Right. So as we're prepping for today's discussion, the loss ratios have risen from 49 cents on the dollar to 73 cents on the dollar, which means that the insurance company is making less money when you pay your premium. When that happens, premiums always go up. When a small business is looking at their budget, they're looking at their revenues. They have to make really hard decisions on what we do, what we can go without, what we need. And I have to say that cyber is something that you cannot go without. It's not if, it's when something may happen that could cost you a lot of money that you'll have to pay out of your own pocket if you don't take the time to really look at the market, talk to a broker, and get the right blend of coverage for your business. In prior years, having a loss resulted in an increase in premium. Unfortunately, with cyber now, losses are resulting in non-renewals, causing you to really have to go out and shop the market. But every business definitely needs cyber insurance. And some of the trends as a result of what you just outlined, Johnny, is that it's tighter terms and exclusions. Carriers are making it more difficult to get this type of insurance, requiring the insurer, the employer to complete supplemental applications, asking very technical questions that the employer may not know. How can you be a resource to employers in helping them understand something that is really kind of intimidating and very technical?
Where to start if you're a company? In your intro, you had mentioned about small and medium businesses. It might shock people, but 70% of all data breaches are from companies that have 100 employees or less. The market for hackers is huge in that area because I'd compare it to a hospital, say, getting hacked. A sophisticated group of hackers will spend a month, 2 months trying to break in, and they'll come away with millions of dollars, as opposed to sort of, I call it a smash and grab operation, where you have someone that's, say, low-level criminals that'll go into a jewelry store and they'll just smash the glass case, grab as much jewelry as they can, run out and hope they don't get caught. So smaller practices and smaller businesses don't have the defenses that bigger businesses will have. When I was at IBM, obviously, best training, people have a lot of passion to do this, and equipment that you can't believe. And also, the most important thing, I think, is employee awareness. And I've got a lot of tips for people out there on what they can do, not only in their corporate life, but in their personal life. And the top thing I would say is don't click on email links, no matter what you think you're going to win, no matter that it seems like it's coming from a friend, because there's so many phishing expeditions, as they call it. And phishing is where a hacker, a scammer, will cast a very wide net. They could buy 10,000 email addresses for almost nothing on the dark web, and they'll send out 10,000 emails hoping to get a small percentage of hits on that. And what they are now doing is even more analytical. They'll do a targeted attack, which is called spear phishing. So as you can imagine, commercial fishermen throwing out a net, hoping that they catch fish, as opposed to them going out with a spear gun and going after a certain kind of fish. And the reason that's so prevalent is because everybody has their info on LinkedIn now.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about spear phishing. So I've had clients that have had cyber losses because they receive an email that they think is from their supplier. The email smells the same, looks the same, is identical, and it's saying, hey, we changed our bank account, and now you need to send these $40,000 for your raw materials to this account. And looking at the email saying it's the signature line, everything looks the same. The email even looks the same. To your point, they can go on the dark web and buy it.
Mm-hmm.
They go ahead and pay the $40,000 to that new account. What are some things that we can do to make sure people understand that you really need to look at that email, and even though it looks identical, maybe there's some cues, some things that they can think about before they send that $40,000 to the wrong person?
The red flag would be that you get an email saying that the bank account has been changed. And that goes to what's called the bogus invoice from phony vendors. And that's super prevalent right now. The FBI's Internet Crime Report just came out and said that in the last 4 years, 2017 to 2021, phishing attempts have gone up 1,172%.
And that's because they're working, right?
Yeah.
Don't reward bad behavior.
Yes. And not only are they working, the amount of scams that were reported are obviously going up, but they're doubling in what the hackers are making. So for every scam that's successful, they're getting twice as much money. You mentioned the $40,000, and that's a lot of money for a business. So anybody who's in accounts payable has to realize that their information's on LinkedIn as someone who works in the accounting department, and the hacker will know that. They'll send out that phony invoice, and it shouldn't just be a knee-jerk reaction to pay these invoices, even though you may have done it 100 or 1,000 times, because times have changed.
Right.
And people should simply never follow up with that invoice, but call the person directly and say, did you change your bank account?
What a very non-technical solution to a very technical problem. Take a minute, pick up the phone, call your supplier and say, why did you change your bank account?
Right.
We didn't change our bank account. Ding, 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 ding.
Right.
And
right.
you will save yourself a huge loss. The carrier being concerned that you're not doing your due diligence, and which may result in your policy not being renewed, or at least your premium going up quite a bit. And so that kind of leads us into, as a result of what you just discussed, cyber coverage, we have lower limits right now because carriers are scared, and higher self-retention. I think that if you are doing e-commerce, if you are paying suppliers online, you absolutely need to understand that you may need to self-retain, meaning that set some money aside for cyber losses, because if you can get limited coverage for an affordable price, and you have a really huge loss, you may end up coming out of pocket.
Yes, very good point. There's the situation where now carriers are having exceptions to what they'll pay out. And if they feel a company hasn't done an adequate job with their cybersecurity defense, they're going to wind up in court with you.
Right.
So not only is the policy payout in jeopardy, suddenly lawyer fees are getting involved. And I've written an article on cybersecurity insurance where I forecast a whole new justice system being created of lawyers and courts that are just going to deal with cyber crimes. And it's a huge industry that's in its infancy. And a lot of companies, when they sign up with cybersecurity insurance, my personal take is they need to go with a very reputable one that's been in business for a while, because a lot of these companies that are springing up to take advantage of the need for cybersecurity insurance, the best thing about them is their marketing skills.
Right.
They may not be paying out when people are hacked. So not only should the policyholder get cybersecurity insurance, they should go with someone that's very reputable.
And unfortunately, just like in California with the fires, some carriers have pulled out of writing homeowners because the risk is too high. This is very similar in the cyber world. Some carriers are just not writing it at all anymore. And that is leading to scarcity, which increases price, right? And it's a challenge. It's challenging for employers. So is malware, is virus protection enough? I mean, am I naive to think that I download a malware protection, then I have a virus protection, then I have identity theft protection, and then I feel like I'm not vulnerable?
Well, it's always like shifting sands. In that way, you could be invulnerable today, but people have to realize that antivirus and the anti-malware software is great, but just slight little tweaks on what the malware will do will change it, and the antivirus software won't recognize it coming in as malware. So there can be a problem there, and there's constant updates every single day from the major antivirus makers. So that's why I suggest, at the very least, having antivirus software on there, but have it on an automatic update where the engine will bring you the latest footprint file, some of them call it security file, pattern file, and that will update what the manufacturers have found to be the latest exploits in the wild. And it doesn't take much. When I first started, I remember thinking, wow, there's 10,000 exploits out there, and now it's in the hundreds of thousands. So that grows exponentially. And as I said, it just takes a slight variation to defeat the antivirus. But I wouldn't worry about that. Just definitely have that in the first place and always keep it updating. That's very important.
Right. So, I really analogize this to, you talked about the smash and grab, right? So I own a jewelry store, and I start with just having a deadbolt lock on my front and back door. And then somebody figures out how to bust that. And so my next step is to have 2 deadbolts, and then somebody gets through that. And then my next step is to have 2 deadbolts, but then an alarm system, a security system, and then somebody disarms it. So you just keep going on and on and on. I feel like this is what's happening right now in cyber, is that we feel like, okay, it's like a whack-a-mole. We have this over here, we fix it, then it pops up over there, then we fix it, it pops up over there. So with an employer, a small to mid-sized company employer, they don't have time. They're time starved. So really, can mid-sized companies do reasonable things from the get-go to set up their systems differently? It's expensive, but can they afford not to do it?
You either pay now, or you pay 10 times, 100 times, or go out of business later.
Right.
A doctor will need malpractice insurance just in case. this is going to be along the same lines, where a company is going to absolutely need it. I could go through any company and rip it to shreds as far as what I see that they're not following up on. If anyone wants some tips, if you have a small company and people are sharing the administrator password or the administrator account among a small team of people, that's a big no-no, because if that gets hacked or if someone within the company does something, then everybody's under suspicion. Another thing is sharing passwords and by writing them down. You know, I went to a store the other day and one of the employees said to another, "How do I log on?" And they flipped the keyboard over. And I've done over easily 100 cybersecurity walkthroughs that are physical, and I found all kinds of things where Post-it notes were on monitors and passwords were on whiteboards and under keyboards, and people have it in notebooks. So those are simple things that will cut people's vulnerability really quickly.
But we literally have to remember hundreds of passwords now. And so, you know, when you go onto Safari, when you go onto Edge, you know, they'll automatically save it. I probably, in my iPhone, I probably have 100 passwords, you know, saved in my phone. Is that something that is vulnerable? Is that
Yes.
something that people should do? Or how do we store or remember, you know, literally 100 passwords? Because it's, for me, it's impossible.
Right. I've seen people do everything from, you know, write them down to more sophisticated ones is have an encrypted password manager system, and that's what I would recommend. Is something, I'm a big fan of Norton. I'm not endorsed by them. I'm not, you know, sponsoring them, but in the corporate world, I watched their evolution from the early 90s, and I think they have a great suite of products now. Something I would get is VPN for sure, but they also have a password vault manager where people can put in their passwords. The worst thing, Eddie, is what you mentioned, is caching or saving your passwords in your browser. Definitely don't do that, even though it seems very convenient.
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah, that's horrible, because just imagine you lose your phone and by the time you get to it, someone's picked it up and then they disable the locking, or they just don't allow it to go to that, and they go to your browser, and lo and behold, you have your bank account bookmarked and you have your password cached, and it goes right into your account for stuff like banks and retailers, and it looks legitimate because you've been doing it yourself consistently.
Right.
So anyone out there, if you think it's very convenient when the browser pops up and says, do you want to save the password so you have to put it in, always say no. And there's a option to never for this website. So at least for the really important financial ones, always say never for this website. And also it says, do you want to remember this credit card? Always say no to remember that credit
guilty
card.
as charged.
Yes. Well, for people who have children, one of the things I saw in the early days in the corporate world was people would let kids play on their company computer. That led to a lot of issues where the kids would change the password and the parents couldn't get in. Their kids would delete information that was vitally important. But someone I know had their password cached for Sony PlayStation store, and their kid had gotten $600 worth of plug-in additions to unlock codes and stuff like that in less than a month. And the reason was because the credit card was cached.
Wow. So another item that I wanted to discuss with you in the 5 minutes that we have left today is uncontrolled documents versus cloud-based documents. In my world, I have both. I have documents on my desktop, which I call uncontrolled documents, and then I have things in cloud-based apps. Mm-hmm. Should I have documents on my desktop that might contain information I don't want people to get to? Should everything be stored on a cloud-based system?
Well, as long as you're standing next to it, it's safe. But people don't know this. 24% of all computer theft of computer equipment is now happening at the office itself. So people may think the office is safe, but say a delivery person is let in, they're a phony delivery person, they have their hands full with pizza boxes, an employee lets them in, everyone's wearing a mask now because of COVID and a hat.
Right.
They look pretty legitimate, and they go around, they start throwing laptops in these empty pizza boxes, and they're gone within 5 minutes.
Wow.
So the thing is, never leave anything out when you're not going to be around. Even if you're going to a break room for, half an hour or whatever, it might not be safe, and definitely have locks for all of your laptops and your devices. As far as papers go, there's third-party companies that dispose of them, and that's very important on a bigger level, but it just never leave stuff out that other people can exploit you with. So I think the flat answer to that is no. As far as cloud-based goes, people are going to, and by people I mean companies are going to what's called the hybrid cloud-based model. So it's not all cloud information that's stored there. They're storing some in the cloud, but they're storing some on their company servers that they don't allow to go to the cloud, because then it's more protected in their minds in their company network. So companies are going to a hybrid situation, and people just take the precautions that I've said. Always have a password on your computer. Never disable it because it's inconvenient. Never disable the antivirus software because you think it's running your computer slow. Companies should always make sure their employees have every single update before they're allowed on the network, and the networks can actually check that. And VPN, every company, no matter who you are, should have VPN on every corporate laptop. And a final thing that I'm going to say about that is, I've seen a lot of people that were higher level, even executives, would travel the world, and they'd have their laptop in a travel bag, but they'd keep a notebook full of their passwords for that laptop there too.
Right.
So do not do that. If you're going to write them down, never keep the notebook inside the travel bag, because if a thief steals the laptop travel bag, then they've got the keys to the kingdom. They're walking in the front door. They don't have to crack the passwords. They're there for you.
Right. So as we wrap up the show today, I think some key takeaways that you just noted, if insurance and cyber is getting more expensive, but you can do something about it. And one thing you can definitely do about it is make sure that you set your systems up correctly. Make sure you are training your staff and making them aware of the current trends and what not to do. And demonstrate to the carrier that you're doing these things on a regular cadence, so that they feel more comfortable. The underwriter feels more comfortable that you are a good risk. That will help you secure coverage. It'll help you get better limits. It'll help you get it at a better premium. If you've had the unfortunate loss, ransomware, phishing, and you're trying to find coverage, then you really need to bring somebody in, look at your systems, find the vulnerabilities, plug the holes, and report that back to the carrier, report it back to the market that we understand that we had some issues. We've done what we need to do to fix them, and now we're ready to move forward, and we need to get coverage. There are things that people can do. They're not helpless.
Absolutely.
Companies can do things to make sure that they can get this coverage.
Yeah, and the fines are less if and the premiums probably will be less if a company shows that they're practicing due diligence.
Right.
By hiring professionals from the outside, and it's a good faith effort to make sure that they're doing whatever they can not to be breached.
If Google and Apple and Yahoo, if they can be breached,
right,
then anyone can be breached.
I'm one of the victims of Yahoo breach. Over 3 billion records were stolen because Yahoo not only had Yahoo, they had Flickr, and they owned a whole bunch of subsidiaries.
Right.
And you got to remember, there's a little over 7 billion people on the planet, and the 3 billion records were stolen of customer. So 3 out of every 7 people on this planet had their records stolen in the Yahoo breach.
And I think also, as we're winding down, I might have email addresses out there that I formed years ago or got years ago. I don't even know they exist anymore. So I think that's also, we have a lot of cyber junk. Kind of floating around out there.
Yes.
That hopefully we can try to figure out how to clean up.
Absolutely.
As-
And the best practice is to tighten up your cybersecurity defense as much as you can. And awareness is a major part of that.
Right. So I want to thank you, Johnny, Johnny Young, Johnny, AKA Johnny Upgrade. How can people find you?
Well, to help people, look for my book, Don't Hack, How to Kick Hackers to the Curb. And even if you don't want to buy the book, you can download the ebook edition. You can download a sample of over 100 pages. I have 15 lists of tips that help parents keep their kids safe online dating tips, all the way up to corporate server admin no-nos. So they could do that. Also, cyberdef.tv is my website, and I also have a subscription service for videos. That's CyberD.tv. So they can contact me any of those ways.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you today, John Young, Johnny Upgrade, for being with us and giving us your vast knowledge on these risks. Just to remind my audience, this is Eddy Canavan with Alta Claims and Insurance Services. You can find me on the web at it's betterwithalta.com. That's betterwithalta.com. I also want to thank OC Talk Radio for hosting us today.
All right. Thanks, Eddie.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. One more reason to tune in each and every time to Real Assurance, the only show that gives you real support, real advice, and real conversations about the real insurance needed to protect your business today. Right here in Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio. Streaming live from our studios here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.